Hello. Now let us compare these sectors of the Indian economy. That is, we are going to compare primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector on the basis of shares in GDP and on the basis of employment generation. In the first graph, we would be taking the years 1973, 1974 and 2013, 2014. Same years we would be taking in the second figure, the second graph, that is the year will be 1973 to 74 and 2013 to 2014. Now when we see the GDP, the share in GDP of the three sectors of the Indian economy, we would conclude that the primary sector has 38% share in GDP, whereas the secondary sector has 12% share in GDP, and the tertiary sector has 60% in the share in GDP in 73 and 74. Whereas in the year 2013-2014, the primary sector share was 10%, secondary sector share in GDP was 15%, and 75% approximately was the share of the tertiary sector in the GDP of the country. Similarly, when it comes to the point of employment, primary sector was employing 74% people, secondary sector was employed 11% people, and tertiary sector was employing 15% people in the year 1973 and 74. In the year 2013 and 2014, the share of primary sector in the employment was 49%, and secondary sector was having 24%, and tertiary sector was having 27%. Now when we compare these two graphs together, now we will come to the conclusion that more and more people are employed in the primary sector, and the share in GDP is less as compared to the tertiary sector, where less number of people are employed and the share in GDP of the tertiary sector is very high. Now let us discuss about GDP. What is GDP? GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product. GDP is the sum of the value of all the final goods and services produced in the three sectors of the economy during a particular period of time. Means it is the sum total of all the value of final goods and services produced in primary sector, tertiary sector, and the secondary sector throughout the year. Now, two types of goods can we have. We can have final goods, we can have intermediate goods. Now, final goods are those goods which are ready for consumption. Intermediate goods are the raw materials. Intermediate goods are those goods which are used in the production of final goods. Now, while calculating the GDP of the country, we take final goods. We are not using intermediate goods. While final goods are used in the calculation of GDP, whereas intermediate goods are not used in the calculation of GDP. Now, intermediate goods are the goods which are used in the production of the final goods. Means they are the raw materials. They are used in the production of the final goods and services. Final goods and services already contains the value of intermediate goods. Now, if we include the value of intermediate goods and services separately, it will lead to double counting, and this will not give actual figure of goods and services produced. Therefore, the value of final goods are included and the value of intermediate goods are not included in the calculation of GDP. Now let us take an example. The farmer sells wheat to a flour mill. The mill grinds it and sells the flour to a biscuit company. The biscuit company uses the flour along with sugar and oil to make biscuits. The biscuits produced are the final goods, and final goods already contains the value of flour that it is used in the production of the final goods. Now if we count the value of the flour again and again, we face the problem of double counting, and when this problem of double counting arises, it will not give us the clear picture of GDP in a country. Now let us discuss how more employment can be generated in the rural areas. Point number 1, loans should be provided to the small farmers by the government. Point number 2, new dams and canals should be constructed. This will lead to more employment in the rural areas. Number 3, banks should provide agricultural credit to the farmers for the improvement of farming. Number 4. More schools should be opened in the rural areas. It will provide loan to about 20 lakh people in education sector. Next, health services should be provided in rural areas. This will increase the jobs in the health center. More and more jobs will be created for the doctors, for the nurses, and for the other staff. Tourism can be increased. It can generate employment to 35 lakh people alone.